So we're continuing on with the very important Siman Kuf Yud regarding Din Sofik Treifas She'ir Basar. All kinds of sfekas that occurred with a piece of meat. And even though the Siman does not begin with that, the Siman begins with the Davar Chashuv, Davar Shebeminyan. A good deal of the Siman does deal with various interesting sfekas that we've not encountered before. Different musagim, different concepts. So just to review just a little bit, the Halacha that was learned last time, the very beginning of Kuf Yud, deals with an additional Isur Midrabanan, and that is a Davar Chashuv, a Davar Shebeminyan. Certain items that are valuable, that are important, that are held important by people, are not bottled by Elef. And the concept of not being bottled by Elef is familiar to us from Davar Roili Skabed or Birya, Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin. So we're familiar with the concept that there are times that even though there's a din of Bitul B'Roi Midoraisa, Midrabanan there isn't at times. Just that this one was unique. The Davar Shebeminyan, the various machlokes in the Gemara, and amongst the Meforshim, including the Achronim, as to how we learn, how we paskin, like Rabbi Yochanan, or like Rish Lakish, and how do we understand the Davar Shebeminyan? Is it everything that is counted at all times, or is it something that is just counted some of the times? And somehow it appears, especially the way the Aruch HaShulchan learns, that the Mechaber, in his Lashon, seems to make no machlekes here. In other words, he seems to reconcile the various opinions in saying that, yes, I hold like the Chachamim, or like Rabbi Kiva, that there are only certain items that are considered Davar Shebeminyan, and therefore they are not batal. Those are the items that are mentioned in the Gemara, that were always chashuv. However, towards the end, he says that this concept of Davar Chashuv really depends on the time and the place. And by saying that it really depends on the time and the place, he's alluding to the other opinion, that there are other items, other than those 7, that can be considered or deemed at any given time and place as a Davar Chashuv. And why did they mention the other ones then? He says because the other ones are always Chashuv, regardless of the place and time, no matter what people have to say. Because sometimes we do consider people's opinions, people's whims, right? People's habits, minhagim of a certain place. But in this case, there are certain items that the Chachamim always considered Chashuv, and therefore they would not be batal. And we went through the various items, and then we went on to Siv Beis, that is a little bit different. Siv Beis talks about Balei Chaim, Shenis Arvu, animals that got mixed up. Live animals, that is. Live animals are Chashuv, and therefore they're not batal. And even though one was Asr, the whole bunch is Asr. However, the Mechaber says as follows, and maybe we'll read it again inside. Balei Chaim Shenis Arvu B'Chaim V'Nishchetu, batal Chashivuson, their Chashivus is gone. This is similar to Birya Shenis Rasik, right? The Birya that lost its Tzura, that lost its form, its shape, it lost its status, its Chashivus, right? So here, the Balei Chaim, if they were slaughtered already, they're no longer Balei Chaim, they're no longer alive. They're dead, they're slaughtered. So they lost their Chashivus and their batal. As long as they were slaughtered with Shoigig and not b'mezid. Otherwise, we run into the problem of Mevatal Isur Lechatchila, which we've learned in the past, that in most cases, most of the time, we don't do that. We're not Mevatal and Isur Lechatchila. Just that it should become batal. We need more. So here, Hu Shenishchatu b'Shoigig. But here the Ramah adds some cryptic words that the Shach and Taz feel that they need to explain. V'davka balei chaim k'tanim sheinam ruim liskabel le'achar shchitason. He says, even though we're talking about bitul of the chashivas after they were slaughtered with shoigit, the Ramah says v'davka balei chaim k'tanim. We must be talking about small little animals like pigeons, maybe, that are not royally skabed le'achar shchitason. Why say that? So without getting into word for what the Shach and Taz have to say here, because they have obviously a problem with what he says, and the problem deals with, what do you mean royally skabed? I mean, we have animals that are royally skabed, that are not royally skabed because they're full of feathers or wool. It was complete animals. So What does this have to do with? I mean, why do you say hidavka balechaim ktanim shenam ruim liskaber lachar shchitos? I mean, that's really a separate din. Small, big, what difference does that make? I mean, it could make a difference in a davar shebeminyan, but he's saying here words about enon royal liskaber lachar shchitos, and they must be talking about small ones. Otherwise, we have a problem with royal liskaber. Do we really have a problem with royal liskaber? I mean, balechaim. I mean, if it's not cut up, if it's not shaved off, if it's not the feathers haven't been plucked, I mean, it's not royal liskaber in the way, in that shape. So the words here are a little bit cryptic, and that is why the Achronim have here a little bit of a problem with his words. But what's the simple understanding of the Ramah? The simple understanding of the Ramah, obviously the Ramah is talking about a totally different, separate halacha. In other words, dafke balechaim ktanim. In other words, the small ones that you may not have an issue with the davar shebeminyan. She'enon really skaber le'achar shchitos, and that's a separate din. That you don't have the additional problem of royal liskaber. In other words, let's say something has lost its chashivas because it's no longer a davar shebeminyan. They're slaughtered. The animals are slaughtered, so they don't have the chashivas that they had when they were alive. But you want to make sure that you don't have any additional problems. You have chatichas that are mixed right now. There could be one of the chatichas is royal liskaber. So it's really like a totally separate din. And that's why it's a little bit confusing here, that it doesn't really belong here. He's just alluding to a separate issue that may arise. That's all he's doing. So, dafka balechaim ktanim, shenan ruili skabed, la'achar shchitosin, that this would not be an issue of a davar shebeminyan. And obviously, we're aware that you may or may not have a problem with chaticha ruili skabed, depending on the piece, depending on what you're dealing with after it's been cut up. That's basically the halachas that we covered last time. Now, on to the bigger sugya. There's a sugya in the Gemara in various places in Shas called kavua. Kavua means something that is fixed, something that is set, something that is there permanently. It's called kavua. You have another concept that is called the porish, something that has separated itself from a particular place. So you have kavua, which is a place that is continuously there, a store. The store is there. And you have a concept called the porish, which means something that has been removed from the klal, from the mixture, from where it was before originally. Okay, so kavua, something that is fixed, and called the porish, something that has been polished, nifresh, was removed. Kavua, the rabbis tell us, and the learners from Xeris Akosov, kol kavua kemechze al mechze dame. You no longer have roiv when you have something kavua. You have 50-50. In other words, what is roiv? Roiv means probabilities. Roiv means the majority. Roiv tells me that most likely the probabilities are that this is mutter. Why? Because I have more of it than the treif one, right? So we have a din of bitul because of that roiv. Where do we learn it from? Achri Rabbim nehatos. So the din of roiv we learn from Achri Rabbim, at least according to one opinion. And what are we saying? What we're saying is here that the piece that I take most likely is from the majority. And that is why, remember, we had the opinions that held that you can't have them all at the same time because that defeats the whole purpose. Or you're saying that what I'm taking at any given time is the one that's mutter. So everybody agrees that when I take one, it's mutter. That's roiv. But to have them all together is a separate problem. Even though the Rosh is the one that says that the din of bitul means that the Isser has been transformed to heter, and I can technically have them all at the same time. Obviously, we don't do this lechatchila today. Have one after another, or have different people have them, so each one can make the claim that he took the mutter one. All right. So that's the din of roiv. Roiv says that the chances are, the probabilities are, that I'm dealing here with a kosher piece of meat. Simple. Okay? Now, what's kavua tells me? Kavua tells me that there's no din of bitul. There's no din of roiv. Even though I have 10 stores, as the Gemara, one example is 10 stores, and I know 9 are kosher and 1 is treif, or they're all kosher, but in 1 there is treif. Makes no difference right now. Right? So we have 10 stores, and I know the majority are kosher. Still, if I went ahead and bought a piece of meat in one of them, and I don't remember where I took the meat from which store I bought it, and one of them sells treif, I don't say roiv. What do I say? I say it's kavua. The Isser is there. The Isser is permanently there. The Isser is known. I have a problem. I don't know where I took it from. That's my problem. I don't have in other words, the suffix is not by me. It's not in the meat. The suffix is in the stores. And the stores are there the whole time. One of them I know is treif. So, kol kavua kemechze al mechze dame, the concept goes as follows, that anything that is kavua, that has been there, it's established, it's permanent, produces a 50-50 chance versus a rov chance. In other words, the rov is no longer strong. The rov is diminished. The rov loses its strength. In other words, it becomes a 50-50 versus a majority here. In other words, the minority has become now 50%. All of it is one store. Nonetheless, this one store has become equal to 50% of the whole. Why? Because it's called kavua. And it's exeris, a concept. I'd rather not go into right now how the Gemara learns this from the various incidents that the Gemara brings down, that it's exeris, a concept that we learned it from another place, that it's a 50-50 chance. In other words, you don't treat that scenario as a majority. The one individual that is different, in this case the Isser, is 50%, not a minority. And by the way, this din of kavua, kemechze mechzedam, would also apply in the opposite situation, where you have the majority being Asr, and one of them being kosher. Let's talk about chametz and Pesach, especially where it's a case of the Rabbanan. Obviously, we have to choose the case of the Rabbanan, because what are we going to say? We're going to say kemechze al mechzedam, right? We're going to say they're equal. And if it's going to be an Isser deraisa, what difference will it make? Obviously, we want to give a situation, a scenario where it's an Isser derabanan, and what happens in an Isser derabanan when it's 50-50? We say Safek derabanan lakula. So you can have the case of kavua, which is strict. Kavua says 50-50. Even though we have a majority of one against the other, the concept, the din of kavua is telling me we have 50-50. We don't have 9 and 1. So this concept can even be used in a case of a derabanan. In other words, it has to be in a derabanan, where you had the opposite scenario, where 9 are asur and 1 is mutter. And even though ordinarily I would say 9 are asur, 1 is mutter, it's treif, it's no good, it's asur. No, but because it's kavua, so we say kemechze al mechzedam, it's like you have 50-50, and therefore if it's a derabanan, then you have a sak for derabanan lekula. In a case of a derabanan. Maybe we'll talk about it another time, what that example can be. So that's what we're going to be dealing with right now in the next couple of seifim. As we're getting more deeply into Siman Kuf Yud and talk about the various kinds of sfeikas, of suffix, right, of a doubt, this is a brand new suffix that we've not seen anywhere in Yore Deah. Pretty much. The kadin of kavua. I mean, it does come up here and there in Yavamas, in other words, in Kiddushin. In other words, it can come up theoretically. I mean, today it's not really shayach so much, but it can come up in various other locations. It does, in Shas, and therefore in Shulchan Aruch. But if you're learning Yore Deah, you're learning Treifas, unless, of course, you learned Siman Samach Gimel, which is a siman that we'll be discussing, even though it's Samach Gimel and we're in Kuf Yud, it's very interestingly related to this particular concept in this kind of in these seif, in the first seif of Kuf Yud. What's siman Kuf Gimel? Samach Gimel, Basar shenis'ale min ha'ayin. Have you heard of that? Basar shenis'ale min ha'ayin says like this: I bought some meat at the butcher, and I left it outside. You know, it can happen. You're unloading your groceries, and you left something outside. Well, as long as you didn't leave it for hours, that meat could still be fresh. There have been cases of people leaving stuff in the car overnight and it's all rotten. But anyway, you come back an hour later or so, because you forgot. The package is still there. Guess what? You can't have it. I mean, you can. The halacha, lemaisa, you can. We'll talk about it. But me'ikar adin, that meat that has been nis'ale min ha'ayin, has not been supervised for a moment. Okay? You looked away for a few minutes. Could be it's not the original piece of meat that you bought. Who's to tell you that it's the same? Maybe a goy came by, took that, and somebody else put a very similar package that is treif meat in the exact same location where you put your meat. Yes, the Chacham say it's a chumrah. Not only that, they go as far as saying not only is it possible that a goy switched it, it's possible that shrotzim and birds, like ravens, may have switched it, if it's small enough, for them to carry it off, and brought you another piece of meat. What is to my advantage? What helps me claim that that is the same piece of meat that I bought? The packaging, most likely. That's called a siman, or there's something called a tvias ayin. Tvias ayin means that I saw it, and I remember what it looks like, and I identify it, that it's the same one. And as we will see, as the Ramah points out, that we're mekel also, if you recall, that you found it at the exact same spot where you put it down in the first place. It hasn't moved an inch. Okay. So in all kinds of those kinds of situations, it may be mutter. Now, why do I say it may be mutter? Because the din of Basar shenisal min ha'ayin is still a halacha. We have to be very, very careful when we have goyim around us, especially who are cooks, with this halacha. Right? You have to have a mashgiach. You give them meat. Who's to say that that's the same meat that they cooked? Maybe they. I mean, hashgacha is important. And goyim can do all kinds of things, bring in all kinds of stuff, intentionally or unintentionally. So, basar shenis'ale min ha'ayin is a chumrah because me'ikar adin, you don't have to be concerned about it. Obviously, it's a d'rabbanan, but because it's an iser, therefore it will affect the outcome of the various halachas that we're going to be learning now inside. So maybe let's read the halachas first, and then we'll go into explaining them. Sif Gimel. Teisha chanuyos, the example of the Gemara, more in Ksubis. Teisha chanuyos moichos basar shchutos. You have 9 stores selling basar shchuto, that's kosher meat, kosher butchers, or kosher supermarkets. The achas mocheres basar nevela, one of them is selling treif meat. Basar nevela. V'lokach me'achas mehen, and he took from one of them. Ve'ein yadua me'eze mehen lokach. He does not know from which one he took. Right? We have 10, 9 are kosher, 1 is treif. He took from one, now he doesn't remember which one he took from. Areze asor. Wow. It's asor for him to eat that piece of meat. We're used to bitul beroiv. Here you have 10, and by the way, this halacha of 10 is even true if you have 1,000. Not only 10, that's the example of the Gemara. Even if you have 1,000 stores, the entire Jewish neighborhood has only kosher butchers. There's one Italian. Yeah, in New York. Yeah, you know about that, right? Yeah, some neighborhoods, Bensonhurst. Remember? So it's also why shekol kavua kemechzel mechzedama. Once you have something kavua, it does not have the din of roiv. It has the din of mechzel mechze. Everything is 50%. As opposed to what? As opposed to the following scenario. Aval basar hanimtza b'shuk. Let's say you're walking down the street. You're walking down Machne Yehuda. Right? It's a shuk. Or basar that you found in Biyad Oivet Kochovim. In a Jewish neighborhood. All Jewish butcher shops. Borough Park. Or Bnei Brak. Even better. But the package of meat is in the hands of a goy. Mutter, it's mutter. Why? Since the majority, obviously you need to have this majority of stores sell kosher meat, we apply another rule that says The called the porish meruba porish. That anything that has separated by itself somehow, as we will see. What does it mean that it has separated? In other words, it's no longer at the store, obviously. It wasn't done by you. Like in the first example, one bought from the store. In other words, it's no longer, it has been removed from the store. It is, I have a question about it right now after it has been removed from the store. Where did it come from? I find it in the street. I find it in the hands of a goy. Some say in the hands of a child would also be the same. Right? It's mutter because the majority of the stores are kosher. And it's porish. It somehow came out of one of those stores. Called the porish meruba porish. We say that it most likely, statistically, came from the majority. Zeu din Torah, that's the din of the Torah only, not midrabanan. Yes?
And calculation implies that if I found it in the hands of it, I wouldn't be able to say that.
Yeah, well, I can ask him where he got it.
He
Right.
Right. Able to say
Exactly, that's a good point. Yes.
Now, my question,
Because that's not really called found. As we will see here, the key word here is found.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, if you
By a
see
word called found,
the goy coming out of one of the stores, it's no longer found.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have come out of the store yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It has to have been nimtza, as it says nimtza b'shuk.
it's not called nimsa.
It's not called nimtza.
And by a word called his testimony is not Muslim.
No, yeah, well, you can say that, or it's a suffix. It has become a suffix.
Because he's
Right, sure, obviously, yeah.
He can tell you it comes from the goy.
Yeah.
He tells you, I bought it from the non-kosher butcher.
Well, obviously, if he's telling you, no,
Why? He's
that's
not believed.
no. If he's telling you, then it's
Maybe
more.
he wants to keep it.
Yeah. Well, it all depends.
He believes me.
It depends on the circumstances, whose meat it belongs to, right? You know, he's selling it, reselling it. It all depends on what the circumstances are. What is he doing with this piece of meat?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, sometimes there's a certain mesiach lefitumoi. Remember? Yeah. Right. Anyway, here the distinction is between kol the porish versus kol kavua. That's an important concept, or important difference to have in mind. So this is the din Torah. Aval chachomim asruhu. The chachomim are the ones that said it's also afal pishe kol ha-sheichtim v'chol ha-moichim Yisrael. Even though all the sheichtim, all the sellers, the butchers are Jews. Why did the chacham asur it? So perhaps, just for 5-10 minutes or so, let's go to that din of Basar is alam in ayin real quickly. I guess this is a bonus, and other halacha completely in a different siman, but it is related. In Samach Gimel. So Basar animsa mushlach b'shuk, you find meat in the street. Olach acharoiv, piece of meat. You can go after the majority. Kol porish meruba porish, anything that is porish meruba porish. It probably came from the majority of the stores. If the majority are sellers are goyim asur. The majority of the sellers are Jewish, it's mutter. You find a goy with a piece of meat. We don't know where he took it from. The majority, basically all. Here he doesn't say the majority. If all the sellers of meat there are Jews, mutter. Zeu din Torah. All of this is according to the din of the Torah. But also Chachamim, we already know that the Chachamim answered Kol HaBasar Nimsa Ben B'Shuk Ben B'Yad of the Chachamim, any meat that was found in the street, in the hands of a goy, even if they are all the sellers and the sheikhtim Jews. Not only that is it also, but even if you yourself, one on his own, he left it at his home, and it wasn't supervised, asur. It's also unless Elam can Siman, unless there's a Siman on it, or he was able to recognize it. He just remembers that this is exactly what it looks like. For sure, or it's packaged. It was a Siman, Tvias or packaged. Otherwise, Basar shenis alim min ha'ayin is also midrabban. The Chachamim said there is a chance, even though it's a minute chance, that meat has been replaced. It could have been grabbed by an animal. What about if you took that piece of meat that tolok kli molech hatichos basar? You took a whole package, a whole box full of pieces of meat, and you hung it. Nish barakli, it broke. V'naflo chatichos la'aretz, they fell to the ground. Ubom v'otzo chatichos, and you found them all scattered. Ein lo b'hem lo siman v'lo tuyas ayin. You don't recognize them if they're the same pieces of meat. And it's also why sheyesh loim lo iso basar shehoyu b'kli gororoso chaya o sheretz b'zeh basar. We can make the assumption that that meat that was originally in the box, an animal grabbed it, took it, and this must be another piece of meat. There are animals that are very smart, and one of them is called the wolverine. Have you heard of that? The animal called the wolverine. In other words, you have to, when people go hunting, some regions of the world where the wolverine lives in the cold climates, they try to hang their meat that they caught in a tree where they cannot climb to get it. But they're smart. They'll sometimes find a way. Sometimes they're very, very smart in getting to that piece. So you have to be creative. They tell you when you're in bear country, keep your food in bear-proof canisters. Otherwise, they can break into your car too. And so that's the kind of situation that we're talking about. That Chachamim knew what they were talking about. Birds come and grab, and maybe they brought another piece from somewhere else. No, this is the same meat. One does not remember. So that's called nis'alem min ha'ayin. It has been unsupervised. And it very possibly could be that in this case of the package breaking, animal came and brought some other meat there. An animal or sheretz, v'zeh basar achehu. However, if you put it up with a hook or a nail, that animal will never be able to take it. However, yesh matirin, as he brings down here, B'Shem Rashbam, and other Achroinim, some say the Rashba also said so. Yesh matirin basar shenisalam minayin imotzu b'mokom sheinichu. If you've left it in the place, in the exact same place where you know for sure you left it, they say it's mutter. So the Ramah says the meaning is lehakel kesvora achroin, like this last svora. But filu im hoyo beyad oy v'kochom, even b'mokom she'akol ha'moichim v'mishon ha'moichim basar kosher. Even if it was in the hand of a goy, if it's a place that all the moichrim are Jews selling basar kosher, then there's no problem. So there are ways that one can be lenient, but the halacha is still a halacha. The halacha is still a halacha of basar shenis'alem min ha'ayin, in a situation where you don't have the simanim, or you don't have the knowledge of where you put it. It could be a problem. There's no packaging. A sandwich, two pieces of bread. It could be a cheeseburger too. I mean, a cheeseburger you would see it maybe, but it could be treif. It looks exactly the same like mine, but it could be two people had the same lunchbox, a bag, and it was just, it has happened. These things have happened where people have replaced luggages. No, it's the same thing. Piece of meat. So you have to have some siman in order to be able to rely on it. Yeah.
To foster.
Right.
And you're less common with food or any kind of.
Well, with basar there's no siman.
Is that, I'm wondering why.
Yeah. With basar is is when you have the problem. I mean, otherwise with something else you may be.
You have the same with bread with multiple bakery type of problem.
Yes. Yeah. With other, in other words, with other food items. Yeah. But they would not necessarily be treif. But you're right. If something is treif, potentially treif, you're right. Same thing.
Looking at a bread, you can't bake with shortening or with baking.
Yeah. That's partially the problem. You're right. But that's partially the problem with wine that was opened up by a goy, unsealed. What did he do with it? It's a problem. Bottles that are closed are not a problem. And when you are served a kosher meal, supposedly a kosher meal on the plane, what do? You make sure you see the seal. You make sure that it has the kosher mark on it, and the double packaging. What is that all for? For this reason, that it should not be basar shenis'alem min ha'ayin. There should be no doubts. I may have told you once, I was once on Mexicana Airlines, they don't know that much about kosher. And I wasn't getting my kosher meal, so I asked the steward, where is my kosher meal? So he brings me a tray with, aluminum foil and everything, and I'm removing the aluminum foil, and I said, wait a minute. The food in front of me looks exactly the same food as the going next to me. Aluminum foil, I mean, that's not enough. I mean, did he remove the kosher mark? I mean, I don't see anything. And I'm about to put salt and pepper already on it. No. I need to have everything. And I don't have. How do I know that this is kosher? So I asked him, this is kosher? This is not kosher. He says, you can bless it.
That's what they did exactly with Nati when he was old. They brought him and
with
he
who?
said, Nati, a friend
Yeah.
of mine, he was in the hospital. Told him in the
Which
advance,
Nati?
Nati Helfritz.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You knew him?
Yeah, very well. And so they said, before he went into the hospital, only kosher. And of course, we only serve kosher because
Right.
patients. And that's exactly what happened. The person, the bacon, the rabbi blessed his idea of what kosher means.
What kosher means, yeah. So ever since then, for a long time, I didn't travel with that airline. I was so upset that they actually tried to, even though it was maybe unintentional, to give me something not kosher. It was partially my fault too. I mean, how do I just go about? The instructions are that they bring it to you unopened. You open it and then they can warm it up. And even then, I would be concerned. But usually you could tell. But you have to see the kosher marks on it. You have to have a siman there. Without the siman, you can't trust them. No way. So that is partially the problem here with Basar Shenisal Min Ha'ayin, that there is some doubt about it, and that is why we're machmir, unless you have reason to be lenient, like the Ramah says. That, you know where you put it. You can definitely, certainly identify it, then you can be lenient. Otherwise, not in every case can you just be easily lenient. It's it must be the same thing. No, don't make those assumptions. So that is what the Mechaber meant over here, that Midin Torah, we will say called the Porish Beruba Porish. That is the second concept we're talking about tonight, that something which has come from somewhere, has come probably from the majority. This halacha of kol the porish is important in other areas as well. In Kiddushin, so a woman is pregnant. Who is she pregnant from? A Jew or from a goy? Right? I mean, it can make a difference for Yuchsin. Which community was it? Where did it happen? Is the majority of the population Jewish or not Jewish? Right? All kinds of problems arise as a result of mixtures of goyim and Jews, and we sometimes need to apply this halacha of kol the porish. In other words, the chances are, the likelihood is that this individual, that this piece came from the majority. It's a valid rule, an important rule. So that is the din of roiv, kol the porish, beruba porish. But here we're learning a new din, that even though you do have a roiv, it's not a roiv, it's half. Because when something is kavua, when something is affixed in the same location, it is as though it is 50%. It's not the minority. Just read the Ramah on this seif. V'ayin le'el Siman Samach Gimel, which we did. V'hod amrin called the porish meruba porish hainu shelo pirish lefoneinu. It did not separate in front of us. Aval in pirish lefoneinu, we see him leaving the store. He sees the guy taking it. It's like he took it with his own hand, and that's not called the pirish meruba porish. What's the difference between kavua and pirish then? Kavua, there are various ways of explaining it. Different boys can give different explanations as what is the exact difference. Well, one explanation is that where is the suffix happening? Is the suffix happening at the mokum akaviyas? Is that where the suffix is? Or is the suffix happening on the piece of meat after it has left? Where do I have the suffix? So kavua tells me that the suffix is at the origin, not on this piece of meat. Because had it been on this piece of meat, why would this be any different than bitul b'roiv? The reason bitul b'roiv works, besides the fact that we learn it from Acharav and others, the reason why it works, or the only place that it works, is because the Isser is not nikar. I cannot distinguish the Isser from the heter. I don't know. I have here a mixture, and I cannot identify neither. By kavua, I don't have that. What do I have by kavua? I have an Isser that's nikar. The Isser is there. The Isser has been there all along. I have a problem that I don't remember where I took it from. You see the difference? It's a very, very important difference. It makes the whole difference over here. It's my problem, not the problem of the place, not the problem of the Isser. The Isser has been there all along. I have a problem. It's a chisor yedi in a sense. of where the Isser is, which is the tray store. Where did I buy it from? Right? You follow the difference? By the Taaruvot, the Isser is not Nikr. It never was. I don't know. It was always, to begin with, it was not Nikr. Over there, the Isser is there. It's Kavua. That's why it's called Kavua. In other words, the Isser has been there all along. I have a problem. I don't know where I took it from. So I'm not going to say called the Porish Meruba Porish, because the Isser has been there. It's Exeris HaKosov. It's a Chidush. It is a Chidush. It's called Exeris HaKosov, right? The Torah says, Midaraisa, right? That it's Kemechze al Mechze. It's as though it's 50-50. You don't have the din of Roiv over here anymore. Roiv does not apply to that kind of a situation. Again, we learn it from a pasuk. It's Exeris HaKosov. It's a Chidush. The Aruch HaShulchan is very interesting. The Aruch HaShulchan goes on a little bit more to talk about the various degrees of proximity. For example, let's say, I told you before that even if you had 1,000, the 1,000 doesn't make a difference here. The halacha of kavua will always be the same. The Aruch HaShulchan goes on to very interesting, on a tangent, that what happens if you found the piece of meat closer to the treif store? Do you still say called the porish, meruba porish? You follow me? Because the second concept was what? That I found it. I didn't take it from a store. I found it. Now what? Now we apply the second din of called the parish, meruba parish. We assume that it came from the majority. The majority are kosher stores. What if it's closer to the treif store? Right? So it says roiv is stronger than proximity, than being close. Roiv is so strong that it's stronger than being close. Being close to, physically being close to the store, the treif store. It's closer to, there's 10 stores, there's many stores. The piece of meat where it was found is closer in proximity to the treif store. I would still say called the Porish Meruba Porish.
At some point, what counts?
Yes, you know where? By Eglo Arufa. Remember the famous incident in the Torah where you find a dead Jew lying in a field? We don't know who killed him. The closest city we go by. Okay? Over there we do go, because there, in a sense, he's not Porish. He's Kavua, in a sense.
He's not moving anywhere.
He's not moving.
So even treif is in
Right.
front of, he found it in front.
No, not in that. Right. Yeah, you found it closer to the treif store. You would still say the din of roiv.
On the doorstep, you probably would say.
Okay, maybe on the
Because
door.
How
Yeah.
far does it have to be from the doorstep?
Right.
So you start saying
Yeah.
4 amot.
Yeah, once it's called the Reshus HaRavim, it's completely not the Reshus of the Goy. And there's, obviously there's no Simanim that it came from this store, that I could assume it came from anywhere. But if there's any indication that it could have come from this store because it's so close, I don't know, the other source is so far away, obviously we would take everything into consideration before we give anybody a heter. Yeah, but the general point is still the same. I mean, the poskim are telling us that that's the chiddush of called the parish, miruah parish. Even if it's close, it would not make that much of a difference. All right, let's go through just 3 scenarios of kavua, so we have a little bit of a better understanding of how they play out. First din of kavua is the kavua of the Gemara, which is what? I bought from a store. There are 10 stores, and I don't remember which store I bought from. One of them is treif. This is a kavua according to everyone, and it's a kavua medin Torah. Next scenario. All the stores are kosher. All the stores are kosher. And I bought meat from one of them. I don't know from which one. So what? They're all kosher stores. Yeah, the problem is that after I came home, I was told that one of those stores had a delivery of treif meat. At the slaughterhouse, they messed up, and they forgot to remove the one that didn't come out glad. It can happen, by the way. That's why they have stamps. If you ever go to a Schlachthaus, you will see stamps. This liver came from this meat. So if they find a problem with the lungs, and they put a big X to the lungs, they have to put a big X on the meat where the lungs came from. They have to cross-checked, I guess it's called in English. Very important part of the of the process, the procedures, where you need constant hashgacha not to mix up. with chickens, how many thousands of chickens are slaughtered? I mean, what did this leg? Well, the leg, usually they don't cut up the chickens, but where does this liver come from if they took out the liver? Which chicken was it? So you have to be very careful in cross-checking. Yes?
No, I went to Iran.
Uh-huh.
20 years old, man, not a kid, 18, between 18
Right.
and 19.
Uh-huh.
So there, I mean, you don't have a chicken. So I bought a rooster.
Right.
I'm serious.
And you wanted a rooster and not a chicken?
So,
a rooster.
Anyway,
Yeah, okay.
Chicken or rooster.
Right.
So the landlord where I was staying tied the feet of one of the foot of the chicken
Right.
to the pole.
Right.
And one of the vein was cut, right?
Right.
So I take this rabbi,
Right.
this young guy,
Yeah.
to the
Right.
checks it. He tells me, the vein, chef, this chicken, get another.
Yeah.
So here, you buy a glad kosher chicken, bring it home, you see the feet literally broken.
Yeah.
And
No,
it's like,
it was the young man was probably being extra careful. It was not necessarily a problem with the vein. There can be a problem, however, with the wing that's broken. And the reason the vein, not necessarily a problem. Not necessarily. It all depends, what happened, because with the veins, it could be that the blood will become coagulated or get stuck, and you won't be able to get it out. It could be a separate problem, but not with the kashrus of the chicken itself per se. What does happen many times, or can happen, with chickens with broken wings. A wing is broken. When was it broken? Was it broken before it was slaughtered, and then it could have perforated the lung as a result of the broken wing, because it's sharp? Or it was broken when the shochet slaughtered the chicken and he threw it, on the pile. And then it broke, because you see it's black and blue, because of the, and that's how you know it's broken. So when did it break? It makes a difference. If it broke later, it's not a problem. If it broke before, it could be a problem, big problem. So that is why, with chickens, there's so many are done, you really need a good hashgacha. So anyway, so here you have the second scenario, you have a different kind of mukzak, or a different kind of kavua, I should say, that all the stores are kosher. You bought from one of the stores, you don't know from which store, and then you find out that one of the stores got a delivery of treif meat. And this is a machlokes haposkim. Is this a regular kavua? What's happening in the second scenario that's different than the first? Here, you are finding out about the problem later on. It wasn't there in the beginning. The problem never existed. Is this kavua or not? What did we say about kavua before? That the kavua was there. This is not there. It only became treif later on. We found out that there was a delivery of treif meat. So if you look at the Ran, the way the Ran learns, and he brings toises, that kavua is a big chidush, and therefore the halacha of kavua only begins from the time of its chidush. When is the time of the chidush? From the time that you know it. In other words, later on, it's no longer kavua. Later on, it's called a gilui milsa. A gilui milsa means that it turns out I received additional information later on that gave me some more clarity, that tells me, what? Something happened in that store on this day. And I don't know from which store I bought, of course. Is that a kavua or not? So some say yes, because it's the kavua, the suffix is in the store. And some of the person will say, no, the kavua is no longer in the store, the kavua happened, it's not a real din of kavua. The suffix happened later on, after I bought the meat. So therefore, if the suffix is on the meat, then I would say, call the porish, meruba porish. I would say there's a chance that I bought it from the majority. It's a fine...
I know which store I bought it from.
No, in this case I don't know.
Oh, you don't know
I don't know which store I bought it from, no.
One of the stores had a problem, but you don't know which store you bought.
Right. Yeah. So if you want to know who says what, the Ra'ah, the Chavestas, says that this still has the same kviyas, gilu mil solem afreya, which is what this is, does not make the kavua any less of a kavua. The store is there, even though it's later on becomes, public knowledge. But from the Shah brings down the Ran, the Tosfos, that it's not called a kavua only when the Isur was noida, when we were aware of it from the very beginning. not igla milsa lemafreya. As he says, the din kavua is only mishas chidushay, not from before. Shas chidushay, when you find out about it, it's no longer kavua. Shas chidushay means when you know about it. When it was there before, always selling treif, so that's kavua. It's shas chidushay means from the time you know about it. Just that you don't know later on where you bought it from. But here, it has become a problem later on, so that means there was no kavua there before. There was never treif. There was never anything treif in that store. It always sold kosher meat. So this is an interesting machlokes hapoiskim, and I saw that the Pri Megadim brings down the hefse beruba. You can rely on the Ran to say to go basar deroiv versus basar kavua here. This could be a big issue. You don't know where he bought all this meat from. Where it came from. From where they got, you can't know that. You can't tell the difference between treif unless you have ruach hakodesh. Some tzaddikim were so careful. They could smell something is wrong with this. They can even detect, the big tzaddikim, whether this chicken had a shaila bichlal. Even though the Rav paskin is kosher, they would not eat, those who were very careful, they would not eat from a behema or a chicken that ever had a shaila. What is a shaila? They came to the Rav to ask him, is this kosher or treif? The Rav said it's kosher. They would still not eat from it. So some of them were able to detect, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And the family members were wondering what happened. They would find out later on that there was some problem with it. So the second scenario, we have a machlokes hapoiskim where we hold kavua, not because the kavua is not really there. It was always kosher. It was only igla milsa lemafreya. Could be the Rashba holds like that too in the Pri Chodosh. Kafachayim, Pri Megadim say you can be mekel and have some ruba. What's the third scenario? The third scenario is where you have a treifa in one of the stores. You know from which one you bought it, right? But you don't know where the treifa is. Okay? In other words, here you know from which store you bought it. There is a treifa in one of the stores, but you don't know in which one of the stores. You see the difference? This is another scenario of stores. This time you know from which one you bought it. One of the stores has treif, but you don't know which store has treif. So did you end up buying the treif or not? The Taz holds that it's a real suffix deraisa. It's a real treifa. You know where you bought it from. It could be that you bought the treif. It's a suffix deraisa, Taz says. I think the Shach pretty much agrees with it. There's no taruvos and the chatichas here. There's no mixture of the chatichas. The taruvos is in the stores, which are kavua. But from the Bach, it's mashma that this is a kavius derabbanan, not min Torah. It's not a real kavua here, not a real kavua, because even though you yourself took from one of the stores and you know from which one of the stores you took, so you see, I mean, it appears to be the same. That's where the Taz says it says suffix d'oraisa, just like anything else. But there is an opinion that holds no, it's not a real kavua d'oraisa. Why? What would be different about this? You know from where you took it.
So how does it roll here if you know?
Huh?
Since you know from where you took it, how does kavua factors in when you don't know? And you've got a majority versus minority situation.
Right.
So then kavua makes it stricter.
Right.
But here, where you know where you took it.
Exactly. So that's what.
What does that have to do with kavua?
Exactly. So I think that's what the Bach. There's a different way of learning the Torah. There's a little bit of a machlokes on how to interpret here the Torah, but from the Bach it's mashma that this is not the real typical classical kavua, and it would be asur midrabbanan, but not midoraisa. You know from where you took it, but who's to say that the treif is there? One of them is treif. You don't know from where you took it. That's different, but you know from where you took it. So it's a little bit different. Anyway, these are the three scenarios. Just wanted to share with you one more little detail, which I thought was very interesting. I saw it in the name of the Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish presents the following scenario. What happens if you have a mixture, not a real mixture, you have pieces of meat, you know one of them is treif. You actually see it, and you forgot all about it. You come back later, and you took the meat. So wait a minute. Now I remember one of them was treif. I don't know which one I took. What's the din? Kavua. He says this is the same similar idea of kavua. The issue was there. I have a problem that I don't remember. What is it called? Amnesia in English? Temporary? Yeah. It's my problem, not the problem with the Taaruvos. It was the Isser was Nikar. Remember, that's the key here. The Isser was there. Not like by a regular Taaruvos where from the very beginning, from the start, I don't see it. The Isser was there, just I temporarily forgot all about it. Then I come back and took a piece of meat here. You're not going to say, called the Porish, Meruba Porish. The Isser was there, the Isser was Nikar. That's Kavua. And it's Asr. It's no longer Taaruvos. It's no longer Roiv. It's 50-50 and 50-50. It's a Suffolk Deraisa. And you have to be Machmer. Interesting point. This could happen too. Get rid of it. Throw it away. Give it to the goy. Give it to the dogs. Don't keep treif around. Right? You don't want to keep treif food around the house. Somebody might get to it. You're not allowed to sell treif food in the store because a Jew may buy it. You know? You think everybody's going to ask you, is this kosher? Well, he's going to assume that it's kosher. It's a big problem, unfortunately, in some stores today. They sell things that don't have an hashgacha, and sometimes even things that are treif mamish. You're not allowed to because of that. It's a lifnei iver situation. You're making them make a mistake. So here, you momentarily had a lapse of memory. You forgot all about it. Later on, you realize it. So you're dealing with a kavod because the issue was known at the time. Just like the chanuyos. When one of them is there selling treif, you took from them. It's your problem. It's not the problem of the Taaruvos now. Oh, I don't know what. I have a roiv. No, there's no such thing as roiv anymore. It's kavod. It's there all the time. Whereas by Taaruvos, it's not nikar. You don't see it. We say called a porish.
So by Taaruvos, you're only allowed to have it was already mixed. By Taaruvos.
No, that's a separate din of Niddah. Right? You're talking about Niddah?
Well, if I knew before that there is a trait that was mixed together,
that's what the Chazon Ish is saying.
Then that would be the case.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I can only have the roiv
if it's not nikar.
If I had no idea until it already became mixed, and now I realize suddenly there's a trait.
Right. Unless, of course, you have a din of mevatel iser, of Niddah, lo Niddah. In other words, when did the bittul happen? That could make a little bit of a difference.
The trace at some point in time in its was alone before it got mixed with the others.
Yeah.
So it's only a question of...
Right. You always are going to have the question is Niddah, lo Niddah versus the rice from the Rabbanim, because you have a bittul, you have the bittul b'shishim or not. Depending on the scenario, or when they allowed for bittul iser, b'di'evet. But you're right.
So if it was already a Taaruvos of majority,
right,
and I knew that one of them is treif,
then it could be a little bit different.
And then it becomes a Taaruvos in 60.
Afterwards. Then it could, because the whole shishim is with the Rabbanan.
So therefore I can be the...
It could be, because by the Rabbanan, it may be a little bit different. Nonetheless, it's a very interesting detail here that the Chazon Ish basically says, very much resembles our halacha. That if the Issur was there, it's no longer a Taaruvos, you can't say called a Porish, Meruba Porish, it's treated as a Kavua Kemech Tzal Mechzeda. Okay, we'll stop here.